So I got to look at all of the recommendations that you guys have submitted for different types of videos that you want to see, and all of the recommendations were very different. One thing that I did see in common between them is the majority of people wanted to see stuff in Fusion, and that's what I did last year, so I could continue to do that. I just didn't know what types of videos. At some points I made, 30-minute, 40-minute videos. People watch them, but then when I also made 10-minute videos, people watch those as well. Some people, recommended, hey, continue making short content. Some people said, hey, I like the long stuff because there's so many different things that I point out that a lot of people didn't know about when it comes to different nodes. And I didn't know what to make a video about, so I decided that I was just going to make another template for my website. In the process of making that template, kind of got me thinking. Said to myself, hey, I'm building this out, and I know some people don't really understand maybe different aspects of what I'm doing, so I could just make a video going over different things in the building process of making these templates. Now, yeah, people are going to, get the templates because they save time, but then some people just want to know in their free time, how do these couple of nodes work together to get some kind of cool end result. So what I think I'm going to do when I see something that seems kind of cool or a little complex, or maybe people might not think about using different tools, I'll make a video about it. So that's kind of the idea that I had for this video. And I thought that I did kind of state that all of last month in January that I was working on this tool for Fusion, and I didn't really get to show it. And there's a couple of reasons why, but the biggest one is because Fusion 16, it's Fusion, if you get the standalone or in DaVinci Resolve, there are some limitations that the older Fusion 9 doesn't have, and Fusion 9 doesn't crash. So I submitted my findings to Blackmagic, and they said, yes, we noticed that this is an issue, so they have made a bug report for it. I'm hoping that it gets fixed kind of soon, because I don't really want to provide people a tool that works, but then depending on how much you use it, it makes Fusion unstable. So yeah, it kind of sucks. It works, but yeah, it's very limiting on what you can actually do with it. And now, if you're using Fusion 9, hey, you can use this tool, on every single node you have, and Fusion runs flawless. But most people are going to be using the up-to-date stuff. So hopefully it gets fixed kind of soon. I know that April is not that far away, and I kind of wanted to ask you guys a couple of questions. I'm going to make a video all about what you guys think, we're going to be seeing in April. April is when NAB is. That's when they typically do like their big releases, and they have a whole new feature set that they unveil. There's not any recommendations that we'd be able to recommend, now that they would be able to put in the pipeline and get done then. But I'm just kind of curious what other people think about that. So I'll be making a video about that, because I'm really curious on what people see is still not in DaVinci Resolve that they would like to see. So anyways, I was building this particular template. It's going to be an intro sequence. And the cool thing with it is, you can just kind of take a text generator, which is up here in the effects library. You can pull it down, type something out, and then boom, you get all of this, and all of this like cool artifacting and stuff like that is automatically added in. Or if you don't want to use text, you could pull in a logo image, drop that on there, all on the editing page, and boom, you get this cool effect, right? Then you would have to go into Fusion and change the colors and stuff like that to fit your needs. But one of the things that I wanted to do is I initially made all of the effects here, right? All of these effects with the text or the logo. I made all of those, and those were cool, but then this background just kind of looked blah. There was nothing there, you know what I mean? So it didn't really look all that good. So I needed to add something back there. And I built this whole thing off of these particular textures that I'm going to include with it. All of these textures are what kind of drive this whole animation here. So I needed something in the background. I wanted it to move around, and I didn't want to bring any extra textures. I tried to keep these as lightweight as possible. So let me show you how I actually went in and made this. So I just had, this was my first node that I had. All it is it's just a bunch of boxes, right? That's all this texture is, just different brightness values and stuff like that. It first goes into a background node, and this is just to change the color. It makes it really easy in the template to change the color. So that's the first thing. And I could just make that, but that it's kind of boring. It doesn't move at all, right? So then I said, okay, well, there's this cool thing that you can do where you take one texture and you pass it through a node and make the node act in different ways. And I think the easiest way to show you is to not have it connected. Let's first just bring in, actually I just used a mask. Let's first bring this in. And what we'll see here is on this particular transform, I have the size get smaller, right? So this rectangle is kind of stating where the size gets smaller. I can move this around, and inside this box is where the effect is going to happen, right? So inside there, that is, oops, wrong one. Inside this box is where it's going to be affected. Now, if I just take a look at this kind of explains what's going on here a little bit more. So out here, we have a value of 0. If you look down here, it's a value of 0, and here is a value of 1. So you can look at that as like, okay, 1 means on, 0 means off. That would be true, because we can see here, this node, we want to bring the size down, and in this box, we are going to have the size get smaller. Outside of it, it's not going to be touched. But there's something really cool that you can do. Instead of just having a 1 or a 0, we could take this box and let's just add in feathering. And when we add in feathering, what we can see here is that we are kind of including, might be a little difficult to see there, but it's pretty much just saying, okay, let's say it's a 0.5. Half of that size that this is doing, half of that size will be implemented, and part of it won't be implemented. So that's kind of, as you can see, as I get closer up there, everything's getting smaller. So what we could do is, instead of that, we could take on, let's add in another one. So here we go. Now we have 2 boxes. And one thing we could do is we can come into the second one here and kind of dictate how they're going to interact. So we could just do subtract. So I'm cutting out this little bit. And we can see, like, okay, that little area there is being manipulated, right? But what if you take an image like this? Where we have all different values and because they're all the same, we'll just say like brightness or luminance. What if we have values all over the place? What happens then? And that's kind of how I initially built this. I did a couple of different things. One, I just took this image. Let me show you here. I just took this image and I just have it move. That's all it's doing. So over here to here, it's just moving, right? Just so I have some type of movement. And then in this transform here, because the transform is the one that's doing the movement of this texture, I just had to come over here to edges and then do mirror so it matches here, right? Because if I didn't have that and I had it on default, there would be nothing over here. So I just put that onto mirror, and that then is going to take, so here we are taking this image. You know what, this is kind of difficult to see. Let's make this yellow and then put it onto a black background here. There we go. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're taking all of these textures down here. Let's go to, we're taking all of these different values, right? We're moving those values, right? So it has a move of its own. If I view it over here, it's moving on its own, right? So it's moving. And now we're going to take this image that's moving and we're going to pipe it into a transform that is going to decrease the size. So here where we have the black, we can see that as this moves, we have this area right here that they're big, right? Everything else is small because these values are a bit higher. But where it's black here, we can see right here, it's kind of like moving across. If we take a look at that, we can see, if my computer wasn't chugging, it's moving across, right? It's going really slow here. We're only at 6.5 frames, but it's moving across. So that's how we would take that one image, and now we're starting to add in some type of an animation here where it's moving and we're changing its size, right? So we have a texture that is kind of organically moving in a sense. So then I was like, okay, well, I want to cut portions of it out. So how would I do that? So I'm just using a Boolean node here to cut portions out of it, and I'm just taking the mask and masking in. Let me move this. Actually, I can just view it here. So we're just cutting out first. All right, so I kind of just showed everything, but what we're doing is we're cutting out the areas that don't have a value here, right? But then I want it to, so if I was initially just to connect this up and we took a look at this, we can see that like everything kind of like fades off. It doesn't matter how much you crunch this, right? Everything kind of just, as it moves, it kind of like fades off, right? And you can see that little boxes, they're kind of just like, I don't know, fading off. I didn't really like how it looked because it kind of just reminded me of a fast noise. So it's like, okay, what else can I do to this? Actually, you know what? Let me show you one other thing here. If I come into here and I open this all the way up, we can see that we can see it a bit more. So it's still moving, and this we also added in some movement, so that kind of moves as well. So this is kind of moving as well, and then it's going into here, and this is just then cutting it, right? It's cutting it, but I want it to make it kind of blocky. And there's this other node, there's this cool node that is JPEG damage. And you ever take like a small JPEG and make it big? You see it a lot with like meme images. When you make it big, it gets kind of blocky from the compression. We're taking that kind of idea here, and we're piping it into here, and you can change like the resolution, how many blocks there are, and it's kind of just taking out everything that would be in that block and averaging out those values, right? So that was kind of working. But then we could see that we had some that were, you know, on, some that were off, and then we had these like halfway points, and it's kind of doing the same thing here, but just a chunky version of it. So if I was to bring this in, it would still be doing kind of the same thing, because we would have these like little areas that were like not so bright. And I was like, okay, I don't really like that. So what I ended up doing is coming over. So if you don't have this connected, you won't see it over here. But once you connect into a mask, you'll get these mask settings here. And all I did is I switched this to luminance, and that's just going to take the brightness differences, right? Instead of, if like, it doesn't matter because I did have an alpha channel all spec'd here, but I just like to go with lightness because then I can visually see it. And then what I did here is I took the high and I cut it down. So what that's going to do is it's going to take the range and it's going to crunch it down and make it like, you get this like really crunchy where like you would have dark bits and like really bright bits, right? We're kind of doing that, and we're limiting the range in which we're going to be using data from. So doing that, then I got this like little area where I was getting pretty good defined blocks, and it was like they were either on or they were off, right? So then I was kind of getting this cool animation here where it was jumping around. As you can see here, it's jumping around, but instead of having these little bits that are kind of like not that bright, it was either on or off. So the end ended up showing it on and off. So if we take a look at this and we take a look at this, you know, so this is what we had. I'm trying to find, so right here and right here, this is what we started with, and then this is what we ended up with. And what we ended up with are this is all uniform. All of these blocks are the same size, but over here we have some small ones, we have some big ones, we have some bright ones, we have some dim ones, which we had bright and dim over here. But then we have these big chunks that are also cut out that aren't showing, and some that are showing. So I just thought it was a really cool way to show how a lot of this kind of thing works to get these kind of cool results. So we had that like blocky bit, and if we just look at the background, we can see that we have things kind of jumping all around to kind of give that whole feel. So that was kind of the thing that I was working on that I decided that I wanted to share. But let me show you the tool that I am also working on. Other software has a tool similar to this, but I wanted to get, you know, a lot of people that are going into Fusion to be able to have tools that they're used to. So let's kind of dive into this. So if I was to grab a background and a rectangle, and we'll quickly make a box. So there's our box. There we go. And let's add in a transform node. And I thought that using a transform node would probably be best because all the nodes have different ways of doing movement, but they're all implemented into the tool a little bit differently. And I thought, hey, if you need to move something, you can always pipe into a transform node to do the movement. It's not always the best thing to do. And if you have hundreds of nodes, you're probably not going to want to do it this way. But I felt like at the beginning, this is a good way to do it to get the tool kind of out. So anyways, so let's first go in and let's do our little animation. Let's view this, and we'll do a center here and come over a couple of frames and go like that. So there is our animation, right? But what if you could make this animation look a bit cooler with only those two keyframes? And that's kind of the idea that I was going for here with this little tool. So it's still a work in progress. I have a lot of ideas that I want to implement into this, but first we need to get the tool to work before I can put any more time into it to get it, you know, to get these other things to work. So we have our two keyframes. Let's do, this is for the center, and we're going to do the bounce. So let's do center bounce, click on it. It then goes in, adds a bunch of stuff. And now if we close that and we watch this, now it bounces, right? And there's a ton of different settings. I feel like there's a couple more that I want to add in for like friction and frequency and stuff. And, you know, when the time comes, I can explain this more. And there's a couple of different things that you can do. Like, let's say in here, let's say in here, you know, wanted to do the magnetic. We could come into here and switch it, you know, simply. There's some cool things like that that we can do. But it's an easy way to start to add extra excitement to an animation without having to, you know, add 12 different keyframes and play with the curves and go into the spline and make sure that your easing is right to make it, you know, kind of feel like it's good. So hopefully we see DaVinci Resolve, or excuse me, Blackmagic update Fusion, the standalone, the new standalone Fusion, as well as DaVinci Resolve's Fusion, because currently you kind of add too many of these inputs and really starts to introduce a lot of instability. So hopefully we kind of get that going. Once that is, you know, I get a, you know, some type of inclination that the bug report, you know, went through and they were able to update a lot of the stuff, get things to be more stable. I already have the majority of this tool already there. I would just be looking for, once I get this out, you know, hearing some feedback on different ideas. As you can see here, there's two more areas here. I still didn't make those icons yet, but they are filled with other ideas as well. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on. I'm kind of interested to see what you guys think of a tool like this, because I think it's kind of cool and it's an easy way to really, you know, build out an animation. So let me know what you guys think about this kind of style of video where I just kind of, you know, while I'm working through my day, I record some stuff. Now this one I kind of came back to and revisited what I was previously working on. But hey, if I'm in the middle of working on something, I'm like, hey, you know, this would be a cool thing to share. You know, turn on the camera and then while I'm working on it, you know, give you my thought process on what I'm doing and the steps that I'm planning to take to get there. And then maybe I could even maybe not cut it out and kind of say, okay, well, this didn't work. let's do this way, or, you know, I don't really know. I know like people want to see stuff in Fusion, and I got a ton of ideas on stuff, but I'm trying to come up with an idea that kind of encompasses all of those ideas, because there was so many different random ideas. Like there was one idea that they wanted to know how to make a magnifying glass, and have, with a magnifying glass on the edges, it like has that extra warp. Like I could show how to do that, but that might only help one person, and I kind of want to help as many people as possible. So yeah, and my next video is probably going to be about the what to expect in the next installment of DaVinci Resolve, and potentially a new version of Fusion, and what all might be there, because I know that there's a lot of stuff that a lot of people would still like to see outside of just performance improvements. But that's kind of all I got for you for today. No, it's kind of a different one, but I'm just kind of rambling at this point. But yeah, with that being said, my name's JR, and thanks for watching, guys.